Hello and welcome to the Actual Tech Media EcoCast. My name is Jess and I am excited to be here with you all today. But before we jump into our content, I have some basic information that I want to cover with you. All right, let's kick off our day here today by taking a quick tour of your audience console. And we're going to start with the questions window. So if you haven't already said hi, there is a whole audience of cool humans out there, so reach out and give a wave to the other members of the Actual Tech Media community. Now, keep in mind that if you do have any technical issues today, a browser refresh is going to fix just about anything. But if those tech gremlins are clinging on today, no problem. Just throw a comment in the question section and our crew will be there to help. We also want this to be an informative webinar for you, so throughout today's EcoCast, we hope you'll get engaged and ask all your burning questions. Not only will we have team members responding to you over a live chat, we will also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of our presentations. Now, if we don't get to your question during the live webinar today, don't worry, because the awesome experts that we have here with us will be following up after we wrap. All right, next up, there's going to be lots of cool aha moments on the EcoCast today. And if you want to share those with your community, we've made it nice and easy for you. You can use the Twitter button right there in your audience console, and the hashtag for today's EcoCast will be automatically added to your post. All right, our last stop on this guided tour, be sure to check out the handouts tab for some awesome resources and takeaways from our speakers here today. We have an info pack collection, solution briefs, white papers, data sheets, free trials, ebooks, upcoming webinars, and more. So many great resources, so be sure to go explore. Now, if that wasn't enough fun, we also have some exciting prizes that we'll be giving away throughout today's EcoCast. I'm going to tell you a bit more about those later on, but a few quick reminders for you all. First, you do need to be here live in attendance at the EcoCast in order to qualify to win a prize, and we will follow up with all of you after we wrap. Now, all winners must submit an IRS Form W-9 to Actual Tech Media, and all winners must meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. Now, if you don't know what those full T's and C's are, that's fine. We've got the full thing for you. Just head on over to that handouts tab, click in, scroll down to the bottom, and you'll find them waiting for you there. Now, the absolute most important thing to remember is that we love getting all your insightful questions during these live webinars. In fact, we love it so much that we actually have a special additional prize for all you inquisitive folks out there. So in today's EcoCast, we will be giving away a prize for the best question asked in each of our live sessions. Now, the expert speakers and teams will review all questions asked after we wrap the webinar, which means that even if your question does not get read out in a live session, there is still a chance to win. If you are a lucky winner here today and you would like to donate the value of your prize, we have several wonderful organizations that we partner with. So let us know when we follow up about your big win, and we'll get that rolling for you. Again, we are so happy to have you all here with us live at the EcoCast today, and we want to keep that good feeling going, so let's connect on social media. Reach out and connect with Actual Tech Media on Twitter and on LinkedIn. We have lots of great content, and we always want to hear from you. Now, if you're looking for more awesome content and resources right after we wrap the EcoCast today, be sure to subscribe to the Actual Tech Media channel on YouTube. Another fun way to win a prize and, hey, grow this awesome community is to refer an industry friend or a coworker to the Actual Tech Media webinar series. Now, you'll find a link to do that right in your handouts tab, and you will also be automatically redirected at the end of the webinar. And both you and your coworker or friend could win a prize, and we hold those drawings every month. So be sure to refer a friend because, it could quite literally be a win-win situation. Next, we have a cool opportunity for all the decision makers out there to get connected with new and emerging tech and innovative vendors. Here's how it works. All you need to do is click on the link in your handouts tab, fill out a quick application, and the Actual Tech crew will then match you with some vendors that we think you should probably be chatting with based on your needs. There will also be fun opportunities that you get to choose to join in, like surveys, test runs, new solutions, extended demos, and so on. You'll get some chances to win extra prizes, you'll chat with great people, and you'll learn about the hottest new trends in tech. So be sure to apply, or hey, send that link to a decision maker on your team. Now, I want to take a quick minute here to remind you all about one of my favorite resources, and that is ransomware.org. You can find out everything you need to know about ransomware, how to prepare, prevent, and recover. This site is jam-packed with information, helpful tips, checklists, strategic approaches, case studies, everything you need in one place. So wherever you are in your ransomware preparedness journey, there is something for you at ransomware.org. Go check it out and start exploring. All right, I have one more exciting resource I have to tell you about today, and that is the Gorilla Guide Book Club. It's going to give you access to free enterprise IT books authored by top industry experts, so you can stay up to date on trending enterprise technology. And yes, these books will work on your Kindle, your mobile device, and as I said, they are completely free. You can download these awesome resources at gorilla.guide, and there's a link for you in that handouts tab as well. All right, well, we have covered a lot of important things already, and I don't know about you all, but I am excited to dive in. So let's get going.
Yeah, let's get going with this Actual Tech Media EcoCast. And today's topic is the modern app lifecycle, best practices for backup, security, test environments, application architecture, and more. So I want to echo Jess by saying a big thank you for joining us. On the EcoCast today, we've got a top independent expert speaker for you, as well as a highly knowledgeable speaker from Commvault, one of the most innovative companies in the IT industry. So those sessions are going to be packed with innovative solutions, hot trends, and creative strategies, all gathered in one place for you on the modern app lifecycle. So settle in and get ready to learn. Now, you've already seen Jess. My name is Scott Becker, and I'll be your Actual Tech moderator for today's EcoCast. As always, it's not just awesome content we're giving away today, though. We have fantastic prizes, too. It's a short event today, but we're still giving away 3 Amazon gift cards worth $300 each. Now, as a reminder, you must be in attendance during the live event to qualify for the prizes. And all winners must meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions that Jess referred to at the start of the event. Again, you can find the prize terms and conditions at the bottom of the handout section. All right, so we've covered a lot of really important things already. Let's get into our reason for being here today, the modern app lifecycle. So to get us started, we have a keynote from Trevor Pott about that topic. Now, Trevor's title here is Solution Architect, and while that's accurate, it's a bit reductive. Trevor's going to tell you more about himself in a minute, but in addition to being a working solutions architect, he's got extensive experience throughout the tech stack as a systems administrator and a network administrator. He's got experience with product marketing, and he's got a wealth of tech media writing and speaking experience. He's one of the best technology generalists that we know and the perfect person for a keynote on the modern app lifecycle. So I am going to turn things over to Trevor.
Thanks a lot for that. Hi, everyone. Happy to be here. I hope you are too. Let's get to it. So before you get the benefits of my dubious wisdom, you might want to know a little bit about me. The first thing is, I'm not a dev, so I'm not here to tell you which products to use or which precise processes to use. I kind of work over in product. I'm a solutions architect, so I design the actual solutions, putting various products together in order to form a solution. I work on processes, coordinate escalations, and I craft policy. Probably everything that I'm going to tell you in this presentation, you have already heard. But that's kind of the important point, is a lot of the things that I'm going to touch on here are the sort of things that need to be reinforced, especially since they will, in some cases, go against a lot of the hype that you're going to get from vendors. It's really, really important that, above all, especially as you go into any conference, not this one, not that one, all of them, that you remember that you are the experts. And you should be skeptical of every vendor and don't let them tell you what you should do, but ask them how they can help you. So, application lifecycle management. It's not any sort of collection of applications. It's not a collection of ideologies. It is the holistic development of a product and or service, and it needs to be done according to what your business needs, and explicitly not just whatever happens to be trendy. One of the most important things that I have learned in watching everything be developed within a product org and a marketing org before that, and in some consulting before that, documentation is oftentimes way more important than whatever architecture it is you use to build your application. That is not something any of us want to hear, because none of us like doing documentation, and I'm a writer. I get paid to do this for a living. The other thing that it is really important is backups. And I don't just mean, backing up your code. I mean everything. Have you backed up your test environments? Do they actually have any sort of structured backup? You also want to make sure that whatever it is that you are using as your tool chains, as your service chains, in order to develop, build, support every aspect of your application lifecycle isn't something that can just go away. You don't want a vendor to go out of business and then have some critical chunk of your infrastructure or your tool chains go away. That is just as important as backing up your data. And unfortunately, this is one of those things that I feel I have to say to people from back in my sysadmin days: replication is not backup. Especially database replication, not backup. That's high availability. That should go without saying, but unfortunately it doesn't. As part of the holistic development process, it's important to identify what elements of your product are table stakes. Privacy and security and test and support and QA are all table stakes. And when it comes to test and QA very explicitly, I want to call out just exactly how important test environments really are. One of the things that a lot of people do not prepare for when they are setting about designing a new product is, how are they going to handle exceptions to that product? It's easy when you are a startup or developing a small app internally to think everybody's just going to use it the exact way you intend it to be used. But that is never, ever the case. You are always, always, always going to find people who do something that you did not expect, did not know. And if you intend to support those users, you're going to end up with multiple test environments eventually. And this is where we have to have a conversation about the differences between something like a validated design and a use case. Now, if a customer has a specific use case that is different from how everything else works, then you probably have to stand up a test environment at some point, even if that just happens to be a purely virtual test where you are going to just develop some automated tooling. But in many cases, it may be dedicated testing infrastructure because they may be running it on different hardware. They may have different integrations, whatever. You have to be prepared and have some idea of your limits. At what point do you accept having a customer use case that's going to impose this testing burden and the engineering burden upon you to maintain it? If you don't accept customer use cases, then you are leaning heavily on something like reference architectures or validated designs. And that has its own cost, mostly out of sales and marketing. You have to convince the customer to go with it. Finally, test environments should generate PRs. They should find bugs. If they're not doing their jobs. They're not there to just rubber stamp your code. And I think that is something about application lifecycle management that most people don't really understand, is you actually want your test environment to find bugs. If it's not finding them, that doesn't mean they're not there. So what about application architecture? As I said before, I am not a dev. I work more on the product side of things than anything else. And one of the things that I would say is probably the most important part of considering an application architecture is simply, how are you going to use this? I'm talking within your organization. How are you going to use the architecture? How are you going to structure your support? How are you going to structure your lifecycle management, your integration, development, maintenance? You need this to be sustainable within your organization. You need it to be something that's integrated into your organization's business processes. And this brings me to Kubernetes, which everybody loves to jump on because somehow it is still a buzzword. Kubernetes is emphatically a solution to the problem of scale. It is not a solution to the problems of usability or maintainability or literally anything about managing and maintaining an infrastructure in a sane and rational way. And when it comes to scale, you would be surprised how far you can get before you need to start breaking things down into a whole bunch of tiny microservices and running them on top of Kubernetes and all of the systems administration that happens to entail. I think the other big one alongside Kubernetes is going to be a lot of people will talk to you about CI/CD when they're talking about application lifecycle management. And you have to be prepared to accept that is not going to work for everyone. CI/CD works great in a number of circumstances. It certainly has its problems if your customers operate in a regulated environment, if they are extremely sensitive to outages, and above all, if whatever it is you're developing is very tightly integrated into their environment. In corporate environments, we integrate everything. Always, 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 when you are hearing anything about application lifecycle management, remember that every vendor has something to sell you. And in some cases, that is that they want to sell you on doing things in their way because that is easier for them to support. And they may have an application or a service or whatever that they've developed that is capable of doing things in multiple different ways. But similar to the discussion earlier about use cases versus validated designs, they are going to try to get you onto a validated design because the more that everybody uses the exact same architecture and everything looks the same, the cheaper it is for them to support. So I want to close out here by saying that one of the most important pieces of application lifecycle management is holding your product teams accountable. Product's job is to actually design a product that's going to be useful, but product is going to be under immense pressure to design a product that is marketable. They are very different things. You need to be able to lean on your product teams and say that you need to develop a minimum viable product, not a minimum viable marketing product. And a minimum viable product has to take into account a whole bunch of stuff that product teams do not like dealing with, such as compliance management, application governance, security, privacy, documentation, etc., etc., etc. All the things that are part of a product that aren't a marketable feature have to be dealt with from the outset. They have to be thought about, designed. You have to figure out how you're going to integrate those into your business processes as the application developer. Support planning is a huge part of that. Are you going to lean heavily on things like reference architectures and validated designs, or are you going to work with your customers to build all of their special unicorn use cases? You're going to find customers, even for SaaS apps, will come out and say, hey, they have a special requirement. Can you make an exception for them? And the instant you do, you have a use case. You have to test it. You have to lifecycle management that use case. And you are going to have to make sure that you have a way of dealing with escalations, not that you just say, hey, support, solve this. But from the product side, you are going to have to be able to do cross-functional oversight and cross-functional committees to decide on how to prioritize things. Are you going to try and move a customer to a new version, or are you going to create an exception and the associated support burden with it? In all, you really must think about application lifecycle management not as a set of tools, vendors, or services, but as something that has to be shaped around the way that your business actually functions. Application lifecycle management must be structured around your business's needs. You don't structure your business around the tools that are available for your lifecycle management. Every single business is unique. Yours is too. You are the experts, and you got this. Thank you.
All right, great keynote there from Trevor. Lots of great advice and context there. I know I learned a lot. I hope you guys all did too. And before we get to our first session of the day, we have a quick poll question for you. The question is, what's your time frame for adding new or updating existing IT solutions at your company, with options of less than 6 months, 6 to 12 months, 12 to 24 months, or not sure? So we'll just leave that open here for a minute to give everybody an opportunity to fill in their time frame. And right now, watching the numbers move, not sure is in the lead, followed by 6 to 12 months, with near ties at the 0 to 6 months and 12 to 24 months. But it's an evolving situation. Oh, 0 to 6 months is pulling ahead, or it's pulling even with 6 to 12 months. All right. Interesting results. A lot of people with plans in the first year. A lot of people not sure. Okay. Well, thanks to everybody who answered that poll. We've got some great feedback coming in. And it looks like you're all looking at pretty similar timeframes here. Okay. Let's get rolling with our sessions. So now it's time for the first presentation in the Modern App Lifecycle EcoCast. This session comes from Commvault. Presenting for Commvault is Stephanie Stuck, who's a product marketing director. So Stephanie, welcome. I'll turn things over to you.
Thanks, Scott, and hi all. As Scott mentioned, I lead our product marketing team here at Commvault, and I am really happy to have the opportunity to discuss, best practices for delivering business continuity through cloud-ready cyber resiliency. To be blunt, organizations are really sweating right now because this unrelenting threat landscape. And despite heavy investment in people, process, and technology, our approaches to cyber defense are failing. And on top of that, ransomware is being deployed in unparalleled ways. So I think a great example is, ransom demands have grown exponentially over the past few years. In fact, one colleague just recently shared with me that it was only 10 years ago that they were concerned about ransom demands topping like $1,000. And that seems pretty wild when you think that recently an insurance company forked out over $40 million for ransomware. $40 million. Criminals can linger in our networks for more than 200 days, meticulously, planning for maximum impact on our businesses. And, sadly, it still takes more than 20 days just to recover from a cyber attack. And traditional approaches for security have really left IT and security teams running on what I like to call a hamster wheel. And, a new attack type emerges, a new security vendor pops up, probably enabled by AI, and IT feels compelled to add that particular technology to its security portfolio. And so what happens is complexity and cost all increase. And IT and security teams are already managing dozens of security tools, and they're still being breached. In fact, some of those same security tools often mask the breach due to the sheer amount of the data that's being generated and thrown at those poor teams to decipher. And this model is just unsustainable. So I like to think of these kind of key mega trends that we're seeing out there that, intended for good, but they're throwing up some really challenging circumstances for IT and security. And they're adding kind of like that fuel to the fire. So fueling that hamster wheel and making it spin just faster and faster. And these trends aren't what you might think. They're not security attack types. So first, you've got the use of cloud services, and businesses are transitioning to cloud-based services and storage. And while the move offers real significant benefits, it also provides substantial risk, and that companies are struggling to understand the concept of that shared risk model. So what I mean by that is, your cloud provider leaves the security, the governance, and the protection of data to you. And that means you're paying that cost financially and reputationally when breached. So the next trend is remote and hybrid work. And, we all know how we got there. And chances are it's here to stay. So as more people are working from home and companies adopt more flexible working policies, your security risk increases. In fact, one of the most prominent security breaches in recent years, the Colonial Pipeline attack, was partially caused by poor security implemented for remote workers. So number 3, the Internet of Things. That's a good one too. The number of IoT devices is increasing and is now popping up in critical IT environments. So if you're a security leader, one of the main concerns in this area is just the lack of standards that are being driven in the IoT world. And it's important to consider how this trend creates technological fabrics that kind of affect our everyday lives. The next mega trend, software supply chains. Great example here, as we saw from the SolarWinds attack several years ago, cyber attackers can exploit weak links in software supply chains to gain unauthorized access to data or systems, and they can do it on a massive scale, and that affects tens of thousands of businesses. And measuring and mitigating risk in this area can be really challenging since most of those assets we're dealing with here, they're outside our business and they're out of our direct control. So next, you've got AI and machine learning, and there's no surprises here. It is everywhere. While these technologies have tons of benefits, they're also introducing new vulnerabilities, particularly regarding data. Many of my security colleagues feel we're entering this new phase of cyber warfare, thanks to AI. So every innovation and opportunity to drive our business forward, think about this one a little. It also exists for the cyber criminal. So the big difference here, though, is they're not complying with the rules and regulations like we are. They can leverage these technologies for bad, and they're doing it at a really fast pace. And then finally, that last megatrend is social networking. I think any business leader under the impression that social networks are only used by people, for their personal lives is sadly mistaken. For a social engineer on the criminal side with intent on doing harm, these networks are an absolute dream come true for them, just from the data scraping alone and pulling data together on targets to make attacks more effective. So if we look at these 6 megatrends I just covered and you layer those on top of the common attack types, we have this clearer view of what security and IT teams face daily. And interestingly, you'll see the attack types they don't tend to change. These megatrends are supercharging the threats we've all been dealing with for some time. And they allow criminals to scale attacks, harvest data, and accurately target the victims in ways, we've never dreamed of years ago. So what am I getting at with all of this? Traditional security models are struggling to keep up with all this. And a recent survey found that I think it was around 90% of security officials, they now believe the breach is inevitable. It's going to happen. So it's not if, but when it'll happen and how quickly are they going to catch it? And that's really a staggering statistic when you think about it. What do you do? And more specifically, this is why I'm here, what can Commvault do to help? So before I talk more about technology, I do want to take a step back and talk a bit about people. We really have to start building bridges between infrastructure and security. And this gap between these two teams is compounding many of these challenges. And to make a resilient enterprise, these teams, they have to work together. And I'm sure you've heard this again and again. But early threat detection, cyber readiness, things like recovery are places where these teams, they have to collaborate. And at Commvault, we work with customers, partners, and analysts to develop like terminology, best practices, and maturity models to help shape the cyber resilience industry and ensure that everyone's speaking the same language and that everyone is aligned. So over the past 5 years, much of the effort has really been focused on kind of this area in the middle, protect and detect, or what I always like to call blocking and tackling. But most of our challenges these days are related to the other three areas. So you've got risk, and we need to understand risk as early as we possibly can. Or readiness, just being ready for the worst and knowing precisely what to do when it happens. Or recovery, having that ability to get business back quickly and cleanly after an attack. And it's important to point out, like, this doesn't mean we get rid of the middle portion of NIST. So don't quote me on that one. Like, I'm just saying we need to make sure that we're kind of spreading ourselves further to these edges. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about identity today. And, this is where early warning comes in. And I think it almost deserves its own webinar. So at Commvault, we're building technology that can enable an ecosystem of security providers to properly understand data at like extremely high levels of fidelity and keeping security and compliance in mind. So I encourage you to check out the resources and capabilities Commvault has available around early warning. But today, what I really want to focus on is that other end of the NIST framework, recovery readiness and testing. So in recent years, one of the most significant issues we've identified from customers is that inability to test and ultimately recover from cyber attacks. Recovery testing in a hybrid world, it's really expensive and complex. And, so data isn't just at two sites anymore, like it used to be within a disaster recovery scenario. So, you're in AWS, you're in Azure, M365, or you're in colos, multiple on-prems, like you name it, the list can go on and on. Like, how do you test these interdependencies across all these different environments? Are you able to run that many simultaneous simulations? Additionally, organizations are still using disaster recovery plans for cyber recovery. You can't do that. This just doesn't work. Disaster and cyber recovery are two different recovery scenarios. And this lack of understanding is causing businesses to fail to recover after a cyber attack. So with that, let's explore the differences a little bit more. And, I mentioned the two, disaster and cyber recovery, but there's actually three different types of recoveries. So first, you've got operational recovery, which consists of basic restores of deleted files and emails. And that's usually done by like an end user or the help desk. And, they're recovered from the first copy of data. And there's really nothing overly complicated about that. The second is disaster recovery, and that's designed to handle natural disasters such as, throw it out there, hurricanes, tornadoes, and of course, hardware failures. And this is one we're all familiar with. Like, it's all about speeds and feeds, RTOs and RPOs, right? These things can be scripted, they can be automated, and they've been around forever. And, they usually use a secondary copy of data cross-replicated between sites. So then you've got this third type of recovery, and it's the most complex, like I was saying, and that's cyber recovery, where disaster recovery, is more structured and systematic. Cyber recovery, I would say, plainly, it's chaotic. It's a bit chaotic. It's unorganized. It's unplannable. Like, you can't script for the unknown because each attack differs from the last. So you must expect that that first layer of data protection has been compromised. And the reason why I say that is because the bad actors know that if you have a good copy of the data you can restore from, you're not going to pay the ransom, right? Also, as a best practice, cyber recovery should utilize a tertiary copy of data, which should sit behind someone else's immutable and indelible infrastructure. And also, the most important thing in cyber recovery is how clean that data is that you recover. Are you able to, recover your data cleanly? and quickly. So unfortunately, there's really no established methodologies for cyber recovery, like disaster recovery, which adds to that situation's complexity. But what if there was a way to eliminate the expense, the complexity, and the general just misunderstanding surrounding cyber recovery, enabling you to test recovery plans as often as you'd like and provide a feedback loop into those recovery plans? And this is where I talk about Commvault. So we've introduced a new concept, and it's called Cloud-Ready Cyber Resiliency. And that's done with Commvault Cloud Cleanroom Recovery. And what it does is it provides an affordable, clean, secure, isolated recovery environment for doing things like testing cyber recovery plans, conducting secure forensic analysis, and helping deliver uninterrupted business continuity. So with Cleanroom Recovery, there are three main use cases, and I hit on that earlier. It's testing, forensic analysis, and then production failover. And testing here is really critical. So only through frequent, realistic testing will you learn when to pivot and change your tactics. Many businesses don't understand how to do this until they perform quarterly or even yearly testing, as with disaster recovery. Also, they can't properly utilize the other two use cases here with Cleanroom Recovery unless they're able to do testing. So next, let's talk about forensic investigation. And this is really a frustrating thing I'll often hear from, some of our customers is like often after an attack, the business is ready to recover. Like you want to recover fast, but yet production's being held up by forensic analysis because security teams need to do more work to understand the full impact of an attack. Well, what if you could recover your production environment while also allowing the security team to conduct that forensic analysis? So a big reason that Commvault Cloud Cleanroom Recovery, or big reason to use it, is just for the ability to fail all or part of your production environment into a clean room. And with that, there's no upfront infrastructure cost, and Azure has this unlimited scalability. So testing and conducting forensic analysis is great, but moving all of your part or all of your environment to a new data center is just kind of a whole new level entirely. And Cleanroom Recovery is just this comprehensive approach to cyber readiness and recovery, encompassing security, standalone environments, and production with meticulous planning, established processes, testing, very, very important, air gap data, any-to-any data portability, and just being able to have well-defined procedures. The technology behind Cleanroom Recovery, it isn't like some magical thing. What really, makes it powerful, and the power really lies in bringing these diverse elements into just one cohesive and effective unit. So let's quickly examine just really how Cleanroom Recovery works. First, Cleanroom Recovery is available to anyone with the latest version of Commvault Cloud. And so what I'd like to do is walk through just a quick workflow diagram for laying down your Commvault infrastructure and bursting it into a clean room in Azure and then recover. So the process I walk through holds true regardless of, no matter which use case, you're exploring. So readiness testing, conducting forensic analysis, or the production failover. So first, let's look at backing up your production environment. And let's say you've got a set of file servers that make up an application along with VMs and databases. One of the best practices we embrace is that you shouldn't keep your backup data in one location. You should have multiple copies, including an offsite location. And that's what's so great about the cloud, because it provides this modern offsite backup repository. And with Commvault, you have your control plane that manages the backup process. And this is configured to go to cloud.commvault.com. So your data is copied to your location in our cloud through our product Air Gap Protect. And that's our air gapped immutable cloud storage. And the cool thing is that we partnered with Microsoft Azure to deliver this immutable object storage, which is very low cost and it's also scalable. So once data is written, it can't be overwritten until expiration. So in a ransomware situation, which likes to find every path and try to locate your data throughout every available network and then encrypt it or even delete it, like you have it held in a location where it can't be touched by anybody. So from there, Commvault and Azure can recover anywhere from dissimilar systems. So for instance, let's say that I have VMware-based virtual machines on premises. I can recover them as Azure virtual machines running inside Azure Cloud. And the great thing about this is that this frees me from lock-in and expense, where I have to maintain like a completely identical production environment, and at a significant cost. You don't want to have to do that. So that's what Commvault Cleanroom Recovery is in a nutshell. And this is just the beginning. So, if you haven't already, I encourage you to start tuning in more, because you're going to learn more about the things like war rooms, secure comms, pave and repave, different security integrations that we're exploring, even our clean room recovery services and more. And really, with all of this, our goal is to just provide you with the capabilities and resources to help make you as cyber resilient as possible. So with that, we probably have some questions that have come through. So what I'm going to do is pass the ball back to Scott for some Q&A.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, Stephanie. Really, really great explanation there. Especially, I appreciated the differences that you laid out between, regular disaster recovery and then, recovery from, a security event like a ransomware attack. Just really, really important points there.
Thanks.
Yeah. So the first question we have here, they're asking about, you mentioned developing common terminology, best practices, and maturity models for cyber recovery. They want to know how they can get access to that information.
Oh, of course. Yeah, that's a great question. And it's amazing just how much that's evolving. So right now, we're working with GigaOM to develop an industry standard. So we have all this, so we have this comprehensive maturity framework, the terminology, methodology, and best practices, that we've developed. And this is the type of stuff that has never been done before. So on top of that, we're also building some really cool assessments and some consulting services to help our customers really harden their environments and improve recovery readiness to create these cyber recovery plans and even run tabletop exercises and then be able to take that data into a clean room. So, I just encourage folks to take a trip to commvault.com and, really to learn more. And a lot of that information is readily available up there. And then also I encourage people to, just request a personalized demo of clean room recovery so you can actually see it in action.
Okay. All right. Super. So commvault.com is the place to go for that stuff. So next one here, they're saying, I've read many stories about people leaving the cloud due to cost. How will this be cost effective for me?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And, it's one that comes up a lot. And, we've had customers that have had to make some tough decisions around, what they take to the cloud and what they don't. And at the end of the day, I think it's really important to do some due diligence. Most cloud service providers have really great tools to help organizations better understand, what that cost is of deploying a workload to the cloud. And it's really based on their current activities and needs. And one of the key things I always encourage customers to do is take advantage of the cloud economics that are out there and just make sure you're constantly right sizing, constantly taking a look at that. You can't just let it sit there. So, just because you have a machine deployed of one size on premises, it doesn't necessarily mean you need to do the same thing in the cloud, especially in a recovery environment. So it's important to constantly be looking at those things. And, knowing what you have, estimating those costs, and looking for places to trim and cut back even a little is a great way to avoid those unexpected costs. But it's something you got to stay on top of. Another also is to use Commvault capabilities that allow you to be more efficient and effective and execute your recovery plan testing or even your forensics during those key points in time. And I say that key points in time, so you don't have it running all the time when you need to do so, like rather than keeping this massive infrastructure running all the time. Use it when you need it.
Gotcha. I like that idea of key points in time. It's a really important concept. This next question I really like. So they're wondering, for clean room recovery, how often can I run these tests? Are there any limits?
How often do you want to run them?
Uh,
Yeah, I mean, one of the great things about clean room recovery is that you can test as many times as you want. Like I mentioned, when we were talking about cloud costs and like, use it when you need it, like you only pay for what you use while you're using it. So it's not this massive expense. And it's totally up to your discretion how frequently or for how long you want to run those tests. And remember, like testing ensures resilience and business continuity. And it's also important to bring up that also NIST recommends that backups of data are conducted, protected, maintained, and tested because it's better to identify, an unexpected issue during testing than during an actual cyber event because nobody wants to have to do that. So it's nice to be in a situation to be able to tell a customer, well, how often do you want to test? Because you're given that flexibility to make those decisions. Whereas it's been very hard for organizations to do that in the past, no matter what size the organization is, how much data they have. They've got the flexibility to be able to do that.
Okay. Well, Stephanie, this has been great. I could ask you these questions from the audience all day. Unfortunately, we're up on time. I hope it's okay with you. I'll send the rest of the questions that have come in to you, and you can get back to them offline.
That sounds perfect. Thank you
All
so
right.
much for your time. I appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, and Stephanie, thank you so much for coming on and bringing us up to speed on Commvault and the clean room technology. This is great.
Thanks.
And to follow that great presentation, we do have a poll question for you. We'd greatly appreciate your feedback on additional resources you'd like to see from Commvault. And while you're all filling out the poll, I'd also like to remind you about the handouts. We've got a link from Commvault, so be sure to check that out if you'd like more detail. But in terms of the specific resources that are available, there are data sheets, technical white papers, customer case studies, pricing details, a personal demo, if you'd like to try it for yourself, if you're already a customer. So those are some of the options there. I see a lot of people filling those out now. Really appreciate that. That really helps us out. I'm just leaving that up for another moment. We've still got answers trickling in. And all right. Thanks, everybody. Now it's time for our EcoCast prize drawing. This is when we're giving away three gift cards for Amazon worth $300 each. So the winner of the first gift card is Eddie Andreo from Kansas. And our second gift card goes to Pedro Bernal from Pennsylvania. And our third and final gift card winner is Jeremy Karaglanian from Maryland. So congratulations to Eddie Andreo, Pedro Bernal, and Jeremy Karaglanian. We'll be in touch about claiming your prizes. All right. Well, if you were watching the event today and thinking this is the type of event that would be an ideal platform to tell folks about your platform or solution, well, we'd love to hear from you to help you determine which of our hundreds of events each year would be a good fit for you. Contact us at connect@actualtechmedia.com. And with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank both our presenters today for putting together such great presentations. I also want to thank Commvault for making this event possible. And finally, but not least, we'd like to thank all of you for attending today's EcoCast from Actual Tech Media and for all of your great questions. So that concludes today's event, and we hope to see you next week in a monster megacast focused on optimizing and modernizing IT infrastructure from the data center to the cloud. So Commvault will be back along with 6 other leading companies. You can see them all there on the right. It's going to be a fun and enlightening event. Don't miss it. Next Tuesday at noon Eastern. Hope to see all of you there, and have a great rest of your day.